Okay, so I got my friend Ashley here.
Hi,
If
friend.
you would introduce yourself to the camera.
Hello, I'm Ashley. I am just a little human on this little planet here. I'm
Heck
so
yeah.
happy being able to sit with you and just
Yeah.
talk creative
So
questions.
with the Creative Questions podcast, what I try to do is sort of chat with people about the essence of creativity in their life, where it started, where it's taking them, where they plan to go with it. And so first and foremost, where are you from?
So I am from Chicago,
Ooh,
born and raised in the
love
city.
Chicago.
I love Chicago too.
Yeah.
I was thinking about my upbringing and how much that city has absolutely influenced me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad lived in the Gold Coast. My mom lived in Lincoln Park, where I went to grade school, high school. I could walk to
Yeah.
from my home, from each other. They were so close.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like I got a lot of confidence in my young life.
Sure.
Just walking the streets of Chicago.
Chicago takes it, and I find this to be true for any difficult city. Phoenix is another one. Places where it's hard, like where there's unbearable hardness, the people that survive that, there's a shared suffering that happens that makes you a certain way. And Chicago is one of those places where if you've been through a Chicago winter, a real Chicago winter, you're a different kind of fucking person to go back to that. It formulates your DNA differently.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely built my character. I mean, there's nothing that I can really complain about now because of just the icicles that exist in the air there.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So early on, what piqued your interest in grade school, creativity? What did that look like for you?
So it really comes down, I believe, a lot to my parents and
Sure.
their influence in my life. My mom and dad both were artists in their own kind of way. My dad he sold granite for a living his whole life. That I was being raised by him, and he definitely wanted me to be an artist. So he exposed me to perspective at a young age.
Yeah.
He took me to all the art museums that he could. He took me to his art school that he went to in Ohio. And that definitely influenced me. I think that his work ethic was incredible. So that is a big part of who I am as well. And then my mom is extremely creative.
Yeah.
And a hairstylist by trade as
okay.
well. So both of them already just were so resourceful in the way that they created in general. And I like to think of my mom as a survivor. And so her survival skills really impacted who I am as well.
Yeah. And then with your dad, it seems like being someone that's in the granite business per se, that in itself, granite's just a natural pattern. It's its own version of art. It's selecting the right one and articulating that and being involved in that world. That's a really interesting trait and cool.
Yeah, he was so cool. And then my parents, they separated when I was really young, but they found partners that absolutely impacted me as well. My stepmom is also an artist. She creates jewelry and any sort of home experience, whether it's a coaster or a picture, she can do it all.
Yeah.
And then my mom dated my stepdad, who lives in Europe. So I traveled at a really young age, constantly visiting
to these other places.
Andy. Yeah, so that also really impacted my perspective of the world and ultimately creativity.
And early on, how did you find yourself expressing that in Chicago?
I feel like exploration in general,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was just like hanging out with all the graffiti artists in Chicago and seeing the way that they created their masterpieces. I also
Did you find yourself attracted to the graffiti scene at a young age?
absolutely,
Yeah.
I thought it was the most incredible form of art,
Mm-hmm.
and it was perspective, which my
How early on?
high school.
High school?
That was high school time.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It that was my favorite, and I feel like it's transitioned into my adult life as well so much.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I talk to a lot of artists, their original inspiration for creativity came from graffiti.
Sure.
And it also has these aspects of perspective,
Mm-hmm.
which my dad tried so hard to get me to understand at a really young age. And I kind of was like, this is not for me. I would prefer to just like maybe like cut out some images in a magazine and put them on
Yeah.
something and create it that way. But over time, perspective became a big part of, you know, I wouldn't say I'm an artist, but I'm very creative in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that impacts all that every like pen or pencil to paper, perspective is involved.
I disagree as from the art thing. I like the way that you interact with a room is an art form in itself. Like you live very creatively, and that's kudos to you. But back to Chicago, did you when you started becoming a fan of the graffiti, did you find yourself like seeking out the train yards or like seeing where this stuff was happening? And what was that like? Did you ever get up on walls yourself?
Always, yeah, exploration in general. Like I would notice buildings and trains so much more. I would be looking for the different names on everything. And so I feel like I became extremely observant of everything. And yeah, I was exploring in areas, jumping over fences and gates and trespassing, but you know, it was so exhilarating, so much fun. I was always with a lot of people that like it felt safe.
Yeah.
And yeah.
People from that scene, that community.
Mm-hmm.
Did this love for art and graffiti help inform your career path? Like how did that come to fruition?
Absolutely, because and like you said, you know, I appreciate that people and interaction is a big part of who I am and my passion, and that is art in its own way.
Sure.
And I recognized in college that I loved people.
Did you go to Chicago, Illinois?
So I went to Purdue
Whoa, hey.
for college.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was set on going to CU in Boulder.
Wow.
I've been wanting to live in Colorado my whole life. Yeah. But it just worked out perfectly to go to Purdue, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
And I studied geology, which is funny because you and I have that in common. You worked in the oil industry.
The oil and gas industry, yeah.
I mean, I only got an undergrad in geology, and I recognized real quickly that was not going to be the area that I was going to go into. But I'm so glad that I did that. So you're kind of asking like how did I get to where I am?
I have one question to follow the geology thing actually. Did your inspiration towards geology, was that connected to your dad and the granite and sort of
Absolutely.
the formations and whatnot?
My dad and I would get into such profound conversations all the time.
Yeah.
So like because my parents were separated, I really was in the car with my dad a lot and just like going to and from wherever it was. But this is like where some of the most incredible just conversations about where my destiny is going to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with environmental studies,
Yeah.
you know, living in a sustainable kind of mindset.
Sure.
And being in the sciences. It was a huge passion of my dad's. And it absolutely influenced me studying that.
Wow.
And there were some bumps in the road, and eventually I landed on geology. And then I also got my entrepreneurship certificate at Purdue. So that really helped me just expand my mind with different business minds.
Yeah.
That most of them have created their own business since. So I would say that, you know, of course, you know, my childhood had a big impact, but college is where I like understood
Came into your own.
what my passion was,
Yeah.
and how I was gonna excel and move forward with what drives me.
And how was that? How did college become the platform where you discovered yourself and how you were going to impact the world?
I like to say, like, I was a sheltered city girl because all I knew was the city. And then I'm really proud of my younger self for getting out of the city to just have a bigger perspective of kind of what's out there. And so first of all, that really helped me. I went from not really seeing bugs to like being surrounded by tiny mutated dinosaurs in Indiana. Like I was just like, where am I? And it was so good just for my growth as a human. And then geology taught me to be one with nature. A big part of that degree was camping often and mapping rocks. And so I had all these tools to live in the outdoors, which is ultimately what I wanted. I wanted to live in Colorado my whole life, which the minute I graduated, I moved out here.
Sure.
And I was ready. So that was just deciding to go to Purdue was the most important part.
Yeah. Cause I'd imagine had you came to Boulder, you would have been influenced by some of those things that it is to be in Colorado. And being in another alien environment that isn't where you were ultimately going to end up, kind of juxtapose some influences in there that weren't Chicago, that weren't the destination you were trying to get to, but were going to sort of help the path.
Yeah. And then I have such a strong ethic, especially with work. And so I ended up finding a job, and it was being a promotional model for all these liquor brands. And I am still in this industry. I'm still in, marketing for liquor.
When did you find that job?
So I found it before I was 21 because my really good friend was working.
Still in Purdue?
At Purdue, yeah. And so, by the time I was 21, I was referred to that position. And then basically you own the college town. Like being a promotional model in a college town, like there's maybe 3 of you, and then you run that whole market. So that was extremely influential for me because I went from, being a geology student is being an ultimate nerd. I mean, and you're
recluse, you're camping.
Yes, very much like recluse. That's a great way of saying it. You're isolated so much from people. And then this promotional job meant that I was constantly interacting with humans, and I was like, this is my sweet spot. Like, this is what I want to do. And so I was very ambitious. And fast forward now 12 years, I work for a different marketing agency, but the same brands. And I love my job.
You're really good at it, and it shows in your work ethic and how you like function. So when you graduated from Purdue and you were like, okay, I'm packing up, we're driving to Colorado, what was the first city you moved to? What was your first thoughts on it?
So I packed up my car and left everything else, and just that was it. That was
solo.
Yes. And I did have a friend here who was ready to be roommates with me, but I was so uncertain about what my future held that I actually didn't want to put anybody in a position that, like, with my instability. So I was like, I'm just gonna find my own place. Like, I'm gonna figure it out. I had no job. I was able to eventually, so I moved to Denver, like Baker area. Just 1-bedroom apartment back when it was so reasonably priced. Reasonably
unlike now.
Priced. And living month by month too.
What was your first gig when you got here?
So Starbucks.
Yeah.
And I was connected with a bunch of people from the marketing agency from Purdue because, like, I was referred. Yeah. But it took a long time for that to just come to fruition. Mm-hmm. And until then, I was working at Starbucks. And that was fantastic for me. It was short-lived though, because then I started working for the promotional company again.
It worked out.
And that's what I wanted to do primarily. And my ambition was to just grow even more. But at the same time, I had this degree. And what if I could make something out of this degree that, I didn't have to be in oil and gas and like work on computers all the time, but it would be more like research in a sense. And so I started volunteering at Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
I was going to ask you if you've been to that exhibit.
So cool. Being a volunteer, I was down in the basement, basically, cataloging fossils.
Dope.
And I started learning about what everybody was doing in the volunteer world in this museum. And I was like, I got to shake that person's hand because I want to go do field digs.
Yeah.
And so I shook the right hand and they kept inviting me. And honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. But my positivity, which like definitely one of my superpowers is like this positive nature, like that's all that mattered. Like you can, as long as you're like positive and you show up and you do the work, it's okay if like you don't know everything.
When did you learn that positivity was a superpower of yours?
Honestly, Tully, I really believe I was born this way.
Yeah.
There's something, and it's got to be my parents and their influence on me, and the city. I
have a similar disposition, right? Like I'm aggressively positive to the point where often I'll be accused of living in a false reality, or like the world doesn't work that way, or I'm wearing these like flower covered glasses or whatever. But like I just know that if you exist in the world from a positive perspective and you give that to the world, it will work itself out, and it always has, it always will. That's what that is.
Where do you think yours came from?
Before this life, I think it's just part of me. It's with me. I showed up like this. I think and it sounds like a similar trait that you have. By being so positive, I am very aware of like what my needs are in terms of interaction. So there are times where I'll find ways to disappear into nothingness and like recalibrate and exist or whatever, and then I'll be back and I can be that positive force, right? But like I have to recharge myself in a way that's different. I'm very outgoing, I'm very positive, but that comes from knowing I need to do these things for myself. And I think a lot of people don't do that naturally. And so they live in this like rut of like internal disruption of like the reality or what they think is the reality.
Yeah, I love that you say that it's from your before life.
Sure.
Spiritual journeys, I feel like every year is like a different year. And I find myself really honing in on spirituality this year and very much on a journey to just understand that more. And that resonates so much with me.
I'll send you a book.
Yes, please.
Yeah, there's not on camera, but there's been one that I've been fortunate to like stumble into these moments at the right time, and I stumbled into this piece of literature, and I probably revisited it 12 times in the last 2 months. And it's like it's a main one, but we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think of my mom too. No matter what came into her life, she always was like, but look at it, look at what we do have.
Yeah.
It's this resourceful nature in her, this like survival
Chicago.
characteristic. Yeah, my mama's story is incredible.
Yeah.
And so that characteristic in her has definitely transferred into me. And, I think we all try to refine even more than what our parents were. And so like constantly on that journey. And the people who I really respect authority, I always have my whole life. And so I think I've also gotten feedback that has helped nurture this positivity in me, which is also very helpful. So like, just thank you all the people who have like been part of like shaping who I am as well.
So you get here, you shook the right hand. Your positivity led you in this world where you're back in the beverage marketing uh, game, but you're also out in the field doing digs. What was that like?
So incredible. And, at this point, like I'm thinking, where is my career going to lead?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted the research that I wanted the basically the 7 scientists that were at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. I wanted one of their jobs.
Yeah.
And asking how to get there meant spending a lot of money on more school,
Yeah.
and also working for free
Yeah.
often after that, and then like stepping into that role.
Yeah.
But only once there was an open position, because all of these people,
That's a sought after position.
that's like decades long residency there.
And Colorado is like a very important geological place. So there's a lot of people gunning for that.
Yeah, and I mean, such incredible insight, because that to me was a dream job in that arena.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have had to get my PhD basically, and I had only got my undergrad, and I didn't have to pay for school, and I wasn't about to.
Yeah.
So I'm like, juggling like all of these ideas, and the promotional work becomes basically full-time work, but it's still not enough.
Yeah.
And so there was this time for push and a lot of roadblocks and challenges, still a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
I think in general, a lot of people can relate to that in their career path. And it worked out one day. My positivity, I swear, just helped. I connected with someone because I was working, and they ended up referring me to this position that I'm in now. And I've been in this role since 2018, and it's been able to sustain me as an adult. Mm-hmm. So like I got the chance, and it's
what are you doing more or less now?
So now my role since being hired in 2018 has grown so much. I cover multiple areas of Colorado, all in the restaurant industry. Mm-hmm. Almost like phased out of nightclubs at this point now. Like anywhere that has food and beverage is a big part of my company's focus. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in Blackhawk, in the casino towns. Yeah. I'm in Denver, North Denver, Boulder.
What are you doing though?
Oh, sorry. I am an advisor for the Diageo Hospitality Partnership Program. Yeah. And so I create relationships with people who are running bars and restaurants, mm-hmm. and we figure out where I fit into their entity, into their house, into their business. And we come up with fun programming. We make sure education is the forefront mm-hmm. of my job, and supporting the industry. It's really cool.
Yeah, we interacted a bunch because your education part would, you would come on and help, the team that I ran, you would help educate them on pours and how to be responsible. But then that relationship developed into you and introduced me to some brands and some nonprofits that were kind of teaching people in the industry a balanced way of life at a time when I was like transitioning away. Like I quit drinking and doing drugs for years and years, and more and more it became important to me to help guide the staff that usually were, partying way too hard, doing way too much, giving them guidance and access to information that would help inspire them to maybe drink one less drink and maybe do this and that. And like, I feel like that, the education stuff, the pour counts and the things that we showed people early on was great. But what we did the last part of what my time at that company was dope, because we were able to make a real impact. People still come up to me and talk about those events and the access to that information, which was dope. And that's really cool that you've allowed your positivity to guide you into this role where you can be the tool that whatever the company is looking for, and you're able to use the resources that you have at your disposal to do that.
Yeah. It's, I think about the journey of, meeting you, and like I understand your journey of where you got to at that point when I met you as well, and it's just so cool. What was I gonna say? Isn't it weird, like when those thoughts just like float away?
Disappeared. Wasn't ready for transmission.
I think mostly what I want to say is the listening to you and your passion, your drive, your purpose that is, I believe, also constantly evolving, as is mine, and also pitching to you like, hey, I think we should do an event like this, and then listening enough to understand like, well, let me show you this non-alcoholic offering that we have, and then how can we make this into something even bigger, because I feel like stories are such a big part of the work that I do.
Yeah.
And I believe that your story is so profound, and I wanted you to have a platform to do that. And then you also ended up allowing the platform for my non-alcoholic spirits to speak and tell their story, as well as other creatives in the community in Denver. It was so cool, and it's all coming back to me now. It's inspiring. Like
Sure.
it's all like we tell stories to inspire people. Whatever their journey is, for whatever reason, I think, like, personally, I really do want to inspire people to be their best self. And I believe that like education and telling a story really can like
Connect those dots.
be the beginning of that, or like maybe one part of that full transformation.
And I recognize that, and what we did on that latter half of while I was with that company still, it kind of led me on a course, or started the course to what I'll be doing now and in the next 5 years, which is kind of devotion to helping people solve their problems, right? On every level, still working with people that are struggling with whatever issues, and just helping people find balance. But back to you. So we got to Denver. We're in our career. We're still like moonlighting as a geologist, and I'm sure that passion's still there. I'm probably going on camping trips from time to time in the mountains. What is it about Colorado that you love so much?
It's the happiness. It's the sun, and it's the mountains. I've never been a water person. Like, people are like, I'm a beach. I'm like a water person, prefers to be like by the ocean. I definitely prefer to be by the mountains, or to be able to see the mountains. I think like visually seeing that is like more profound to me than an ocean. And so I've always gravitated towards that. I also love the history aspect of it too. Again, stories. Everything, like there's some incredible story, and like you can even, it's like the stories that they carried. Go on a tangent about it too. Like just almost be playful with how you're inspiring others because of a piece of environment that or understand, and then you can try to make them understand it in their perspective.
Do you see yourself doing any more like work in the geology field, even as like a moonlighting?
Probably not. I've even looked into volunteering at the Denver Museum of Nature, like again, and it seems to be even more competitive than it was then.
Everybody's biting for a job.
Probably, yeah. And so I feel like that phase is done, but I will say, since I've like last really talked to you about what's going on in my life, I've transitioned into working with a female collective. And so we are basically doing pop-ups at different restaurants and bars. And there's offerings. And so it has to do with astrology. We have an astrology reader, we have a tarot reader, we have my acupuncturist joins us, we have a female DJ, we have female vendors who either like hand make their craft. We have someone who makes stained glass and someone who does jewelry. And so it's becoming a whole, I mean, we've been doing this since July, and we've had 1 to 2 pop-ups a month, and we're about to go into a phase where we'll probably have about 3 different pop-ups a month, if not more. And, you know, like on the liquor side, I have cocktails that I offer with a tequila that just is synonymous with stars and sun and all that stuff. And then I also offer non-alcoholic options. That's kind of I feel like this is a movement now. Like it's not a trend anymore. It is definitely a movement. And so I'm on board, we're all on board, and it's creating community. You know, especially with the divine feminine, it's so powerful. And yeah, that's awesome. That's more of like where my energy is focused now.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun. My home, my space, I actually got a mural from one of my favorite graffiti artists from Chicago. And we've done some of our own sort of live sessions as well. Like we're playing with this idea as well in this space. So it's kind of where my energy's gone to more than any sort of geology stuff.
I remember when you were telling me, when you were describing the house that you have, you described it in a way that you wanted it to be a gallery, if even just for you. And so that's cool that you're like realizing that.
Yeah, it's coming to fruition in the way that like I feel safe and comfortable. In a sense, I feel like it's really difficult to just, you know, where I live is where I would like open up a space to the public if I wanted to go that direction, and I'm not quite comfortable with that yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that's cool that you're, you know, first was getting the place that you could envision it being more than just a place, and then sort of creating the work inside of it, if for no one else but you, right? Like it's the space is opened up for you every day, and creating that. Like so often people are scared to live the life that is theirs, and so they kind of just fragment it and do little pieces here and little pieces there, when if you just open yourself up to your essence and just present that to the world, like it's amazing what comes from it.
It is. Like I think, you know, when I think about like unleashing the hustle within too, it's like I really want to see some ideas like come to fruition and see them through. And this has also been kind of like a love child of, you know, these women that are my very close friends. We've brought to fruition now. And it took time as well, you know, but you don't give up.
It's just like the natural course of things.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we, you know, set expectations for ourselves. We say it out loud to others because we want to keep ourselves accountable. And I think that that's valid for sure. But I also believe, like, give yourself grace too. Like, you're allowed to transform and change. Like, nothing has to be in absolutes. Just, you know,
you're always remolding.
Yeah, stay true to yourself and like keep that passion. Just like keep it driving, and you know, your hard work matters. And as long as you keep doing that, what you put out there, what you say, it will become attracted to you.
I was interviewing somebody earlier today, and one of the things that they did is they quoted Fife Dog from Tribe, and they said the quality of the work is job one. So like what you're doing and the way that you're doing it, that's the first and foremost, and then however you can impact. Heck yeah. Well, my girl Ashley, thank you for coming on the Creative Questions podcast.
Thank you so much, Tully.
Thank you for being you and helping out in so many different ways over the years. And I'm excited to see how this collective, like what it brings, and just to collaborate with you in the future as time goes on.
I love that. Thank you.
There's definitely more collaboration in the works.
Absolutely. I'm excited, and I appreciate you so much. This is fun.